I'm Marianne Juwili. Thank you, John, for the introduction. I go by MJ, and just a little bit about myself. I am an accessibility product manager at Adobe, and there I'm part of the central accessibility team, where we support, our small team of about a dozen people supports many products across the company. Two of the products that I support are Adobe Express and Adobe Firefly, and I'll be focusing on Adobe Firefly today. I've also included a picture of myself just because I love biking. So here's a selfie of myself from a bike ride. And while we're doing introductions, I wanted to go over some of the other people who are helping out with this Firefly alt text project, which is still very much a work in progress. We have Pep, Jing, Susheta, Rakesh, Annika, Ding, Trung, and David. And these people are from many different teams across the company. That's including the Firefly product team, Adobe Research, Adobe Design and Research, and my own team, the accessibility team. So there's a lot of people working on this very important project. And to kind of establish the structure of my presentation today, I just want to go over the agenda. We'll start with a background. I'll go over some background context on how blind and low vision people use images and how Firefly text to image can help them. We'll also go over the problem, which in my mind is a major problem for blind and low vision people when it comes to Firefly text to image, challenges around this particular problem, and then finally, we'll look forward. I will go over our next steps and our goal. So let's start with the background. I want to make sure we're all on the same page about this, and that's the question: do blind and low vision people want images? Do they want to use images? And I have to say that the answer is yes. Maybe blind and low vision people can't see the particular image, but maybe they want to use an image in their work for their audience members who might be sighted. Let's look at the slide, for example. Here I have included in a decorative image of a woman sitting at a computer using some image editing software. And I really didn't need to include this image, but I wanted to include it to make my slide a little bit more visually appealing and interesting for my audience. And it turns out blind and low vision people want to do the same for their audience. They have to create emails, presentations, birthday cards, and they want to make these communications visually appealing by including images. Talking to one of my coworkers, he likes to post on social media, on LinkedIn, and it turns out social media algorithms will prioritize an image, or will prioritize a post if it includes an image. They will prioritize that post more if it has an image than if it didn't. So he actually has an incentive to include an image. And one more thing I want to add is that some blind and low vision people were previously sighted people. So even if they can't see now, they still might have preferences over what they're creating looks like. And so they might want to include images in whatever it is they're creating. Okay, I'm trying to go to the next slide. Okay, now that we've established that blind and low vision people definitely, or at least some of them, want to use images in their work, let's go over how blind and low vision people get the images that they want. There's the tried and sometimes true method of going into Google image search and typing for the image that you have in mind. So here we have a screenshot of Google image search. The search query is a 2-tier purple ombre birthday cake topped with rainbow sprinkles, white candles, and so on. I have a friend, Susheta. Her nephew's birthday is coming up. She wants to make a birthday card for him, and she wants to include an image of a purple cake. So a method is to do this image search. And indeed, we get a lot of images of cakes, and most of them are purple. Some of them are red, some of them are blue. And if she wants, she can click on an image, try to see what that looks like on the page where that image is being used. Maybe that image has alt text. A lot of the times they don't have alt text. There is adjacent text on that page next to that image, and sometimes that text is helpful to describe the image, and a lot of the times it isn't. So it's kind of hit or miss using something like Google image search to find the image that you want. You still might need someone who's cited to help confirm that the image that you've selected is indeed meeting your needs. So if we're struggling with image search, another approach could be actually using image editing software. And let's take a look at some examples. The first example here, I have a screenshot of Microsoft Paint. This was taken from their documentation on how to use Microsoft Paint with a keyboard. And here it's demonstrating that if you have an object in Microsoft Paint, you can use the tab key to tab to the different controls around on the perimeter of an object on the canvas, as well as tabbing to the middle control, which lets you move the object on the canvas. The long story short is that it's a lot of keyboard presses just to do some pretty basic stuff on a Microsoft Paint, which is supposed to be a relatively simple app. On the right-hand side, we have documentation for Adobe Illustrator, which is a bit more complicated. And the documentation straight up tells you, let's see here in the first bullet point, some Illustrator functionalities such as menu options can be operated through a keyboard interface. However, most functions can only be performed using a mouse. So we have two examples of applications here. You can kind of use a keyboard, but for a lot of it, using a keyboard is going to be complicated or even impossible. I would say that this is not a realistic option for Susheta as she tries to create a birthday cake image for her nephew's card. There's yet a third option. So I heard about this from another coworker of mine. What he has done is he has a folder on his computer of images that he has curated himself with the assistance of someone who's cited. And that folder has a bunch of images, and the names of those images, the file names, are descriptions of the image. So that kind of helps him find the image that he wants. But of course, he's only limited to the images that he has. And this is a very manual process. And so this is, I would also say that this is not a great solution. And my guess is that Susheta probably doesn't already have an image of a purple cake that she could use for this birthday card. So we've gone over some examples of how blind and low vision people get the images that they want. But now we have Adobe Firefly. And so Adobe Firefly text to image is a generative AI model that takes any text that you want and turns it into an image that more or less matches that visual. We have here in this example, the text black-capped chickadee sitting on green bananas. And below that, we have an image of a black-capped chickadee sitting on green bananas. This is generative AI text to image is, I would say, even better than camera or real life, and it's way easier than Microsoft Paint in my opinion. You can create even impossible images, such as this North American bird and this South American fruit. You can create that all with Firefly, and you can do that in like 30 seconds. And I know that more and more people are using text to image. I see a lot of AI generated images in my social media feeds these days. So here's an example of here's a look at the UI for text-to-image Firefly. We have on the right, we have a bunch of UI controls around what you want that image to be like. You can specify the image model that you want to use, the aspect ratio, like 16:9, other style settings for that image. And then at the bottom of the screen, we have an area where the users can type their prompt for the image. So the prompt is the text that is used to generate the image that you want. So here we have black capped chickadees sitting on green bananas in the prompt field. And then above the prompt field, we have the 4 generated images based on that prompt. So we have the 4 pictures of this chickadee on bananas. So it's pretty amazing that we can do this. And anyone can do this, really. You don't have to have any more image editing skills. You can get the image that you want with Firefly. And so going back to the example of Susheta trying to get this picture of a purple cake, she can do that now. She can use Firefly to get 4 images of cake. And this is what we have now, a screenshot of Firefly with the prompt, a 2-tier purple ombre birthday cake topped with rainbow sprinkles, white candles, and fresh strawberries on a wooden table in the park. And above that, we have 4 images of 4 purple, each with 1 purple cake. And they seem to be pretty good matches for this prompt. And so, like pretty much everyone who uses Firefly, Susheta's probably thinking now, I've got 4 images here. Which image is the best? Firefly is a visual tool that requires visual inspection in order to select the picture. You look at the picture and then eventually you decide, oh, I want this one, or oh, I want to adjust my prompt or image settings more. And that's what many people do. They can also select a particular image and use it as a reference image to generate more images that are similar to that particular image that they like. And here lies the problem. Turns out, well, Susheta can't see images. She has low vision. So for her, when she is looking at the results and wondering which image is the best, well, she can't see the image. And when she can't see these images, they really just look like black boxes, I guess. She can't take advantage of text to image. And I guess fortunately, we do have guidelines relevant to image accessibility. And so let's go over that right now before we continue. So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, exists and includes lots of guidelines around digital accessibility. There are a number of success criteria, and the one that's relevant here is 1.1.1. The first one in WCAG, we don't have to search too far, and that is around non-text content level A. And I'm just going to read that criteria. All non-text content that is presented to the user has a text alternative that serves the equivalent purpose. And so we have examples of non-text content. We have images here. The first is an image of a cake. It's a photo. And for our purposes, as we're talking about images of a cake, that needs alt text. That needs a text alternative. And other examples of images that would need alt text are the Adobe logo, because it represents it's not just an image, it's an image that represents the company. And then we also have icons. So we have this icon that looks like a gear, which generally means settings, an icon of a box with an arrow pointing upward from it, which generally means share, and then 2 arrows crossing each other and pointing to the right, which generally means shuffle. So these 5 images that I've described, they are all meaningful and they're not text content and they need a text alternative. For our purposes, I will use the phrase alt text. I have been using it already, but I just want to say that text alternatives can be implemented in many different ways, including using the alt attribute, ARIA label, maybe even a disclosure or more information accordion if the description is really long. But for our purposes, I will just be using the phrase alt text, even if we don't necessarily implement it that way. And just continuing on with WCAG success criteria 1.1.1, this success criterion helps people who have difficulty perceiving visual content. And assistive technology can read text out loud, present it visually, or convert it to Braille. And my friend Susheta uses a screen reader, and that screen reader reads out loud the alt text for images that she can't see. So this is really critical. This success criteria is what we need to focus on with respect to Firefly, alt text to images. And I do want to say, we do offer some form of alt text today. What we offer is something like this. I have a screenshot again of the 4 images of purple cakes in Firefly that we got from Susheta's prompt. And the alt text for each image is something like variation 1 of 4, variation 2 of 4, variation 3 of 4, and variation 4 of 4. So we do offer alt text, but in my opinion, it might as well be nothing. It might as well just be black boxes, because this is, I guess, alt text, but I would say that the alt text that we have today, variation whatever of 4, it doesn't serve the equivalent purpose. It has nothing to do with cakes. It has nothing to do with cakes. We can try a little harder. We have some more information, right? We also have the prompt. Maybe we can take that prompt and apply it to the images. And so, again, looking at the prompt is a 2-tier purple ombre birthday cake topped with rainbow sprinkles, white candles, and fresh strawberries on a wooden table in the park. So we can certainly apply it to all 4 of these images. But then I'm not sure that that's helpful either, because if images all have the same alt text, it implies that they're the same image. And we can, visually, we can see that these are not exactly the same. There are some differences with these cakes. And so applying the same alt text to all 4 images would be inaccurate. And also, some of these cakes don't even have white candles. Just looking at image 1 and image 2, those candles are yellow, green, and pink. So inaccurate, and also just not helpful if all these images are different but gonna have the same alt text. So variation X of 4 isn't helpful. Using the prompt as alt text isn't helpful. What else can we do? Maybe we can use AI to come up with alt text. And so that is what we're doing with this Firefly alt text project. It's still, as I said, a work in progress, but we've been thinking about it, and we're looking into some models to support helpful alt text. And there are definitely some challenges including prompt and image matching, differences, other potentially interesting details, and of course, alt text accuracy. So the first question that I think a lot of people ask when they use Firefly, I feel this way, is when I get my 4 images, I want to know, does the image match the prompt? And this is the same for blind and low vision users. Susheta has created these 4 images, and she wants to know, does this image match the prompt for each image, so that she can select the one that meets her needs. And it turns out that answering that question can be complicated. So let's look at that prompt against image number 2. For starting out with the first part of the prompt, we have a 2-tier purple ombre birthday cake. And I can't even say yes or no. Is there a match here? Because we have a cake that has indeed 2 tiers, and the first tier is purple ombre. It goes from purple to blue, but the second tier is solid. So what do I say to that when Susheta says, does the image match the prompt? I would say kind of for this part. Is it topped with rainbow sprinkles? Yes. Are there white candles? No. So answering this question, does the image match the prompt, is not simple. It's not a one-word answer because of all the different parts of the prompt. So we are looking into several solutions for determining prompt and image matching. Right now, we actually have available an embed model to calculate a prompt image similarity score, and that's just a number. But we also want to look into, we're also looking into multimodal language model to identify different parts of the prompt. And are those parts of the prompts matched or unmatched in the image? And if we can get this second part working, this multimodal language model working, I think that would answer this question for us like pretty easily. And so I'm hoping that we can get there. But the work is ongoing. The other question people like to ask, especially blind low vision people, when they're looking at Firefly text-to-image images, is what are the differences between images? What are the differences between these 4 images? And before we go into that, it's important to note that even with the previous question of does the image match the prompt, we can get 4 images that match the prompt perfectly, but we're still gonna have differences between the images. So it's really important that we clarify what those differences are. So let's look at image number 1 and image number 2 and what their differences are. There's a lot. The number of tiers, the purple ombre color, the plain bottom tier on image number 2, the serving dish between the two, for the 2 different cakes. The number of candles varies from cake to cake. Cake number 1 is on a table and cake number 2 is on a stump. And there are other things on the table as well with these cakes, and the background is slightly different. Ones seem to have a little bit more lighting or is brighter, and the other one's a little bit darker. There are lots of differences between these 2 images alone, and we still have 2 more images to talk about in this collection of 4 images generated from the prompt. And so the number of differences is virtually infinite. So the next question is, which of those differences are meaningful? Which differences are big enough to be worth including in the alt text? And I think that is something that we're trying to focus on because of the way that Firefly works. With Firefly, you're gonna get 4 images that are so similar. Prompt matching is gonna be it's gonna be pretty close to the prompt that you enter. And so the critical part then for alt text is going to be the differences because of how similar the images are. And that's what we're focusing in our research project to begin with, is identifying and surfacing those differences to users. Okay. And so a potential solution for differences is this in-progress work that we have around a multimodal language model that outputs different summaries for sets of images. So we would input images, and then we get the model would determine the differences between the images and then summarize those differences as an output. Okay. And trying to go to my, there are other details worth knowing. We've covered prompt difference. Does the image match the prompt? What are the differences between the images? There are still other details worth knowing, details that might be similar across all images but weren't specified in the prompt. let's take a look at at our cake example some more. So some shared features that weren't specified in the prompt include all the cakes were round, even though cakes can be in different shapes. They all have this glaze on top. They're all photos, and they all are taken at eye level. In general, there are shared features that blind low vision users are interested that might not be specified in the prompt, but they're still interested in knowing. So that includes text in the image, which is a WCAG success, part of WCAG 1.1.1. And we also have, they also want to know about settings, lighting, composition, colors, and mood. Specific to Firefly, because Firefly is an Adobe product, we are very art focused. There are these controls in Firefly where you can specify the different styles for your image. So I think for Firefly especially, we also should include details around image style. Is it a photo? Is it an oil painting? Is it a watercolor painting? Is it a sketch? These details, I think, are unique to Firefly, and we should include that. You know, AI, I also want to shift gears a little bit and talk about AI mistakes. So we'll use a bicycle example, as I'm a big fan of bicycling. We've probably seen examples of text-to-image images being inaccurate, let's say. Here we have an example of a bicycle, but it looks like it's missing pedals, and the frame tubes seem to be disconnected towards the back of the bike. I probably would not ride it myself, but this is an AI mistake, and blind, low vision, and I can see that as a sighted person, and blind and low vision users need to be aware of these mistakes as well, so that they can select images that meet their needs. And if they don't want AI mistakes in their images, they should be able to avoid them as well if we can inform them of the mistakes. In progress, we have research right now around the model that will detect AI mistakes. And I think that would be really great. And I'm wondering also, if we're able to detect AI mistakes, would that then help us avoid even showing images with mistakes? Like if we can detect like this image has a mistake, shouldn't we scrap that and generate another image to replace it that doesn't have mistakes? I think that would be, so this model would be helpful for us to include mistake information in alt text, but I think it would just be helpful in general to make sure that we're showing images that are good, for lack of a better word. And then there's the question around other details that people might want to know are visually abstract objects. So looking at image number 1 from the cake example, we have this shiny multicolor flat thing. There are a couple strawberries sitting on it, and it's on top of a table. What is that? Is that a birthday card? Is it a decorative napkin? Is it a glittery plate? A knitted pot holder, as another friend suggested? Who knows? And I think when we are not confident about what something is in an image, we're not confident enough to describe what it is as an object, I would probably err on the side of being just descriptive of only what's visibly apparent. So in this case, I would probably phrase this as a flat, rectangular, multicolor object and leave it at that. Blind low vision users can read that and they can decide for themselves if they want that multicolor object in their image or not. When all else fails, you know, we can try hard we can include prompt matching, we can cover differences, we can cover shared details across images, we can talk about AI mistakes and abstract objects, but there are probably going to be situations where blind low vision users still have questions about what's in the image. And when all else fails, we should get user preferences. One way to do that is to look at the reference image that they are focusing on and iterating on in Firefly. Maybe we can look at that reference image and use that to infer what matters to them. We can also change our UI and let people kind of check boxes for like the kinds of details that they're interested in for alt text. And another thing would be, we could just give them this kind of interface where they can type questions about images. And I think that that last bit, user queries, has an added benefit. We can analyze the user queries and use that information to inform how we can adjust the alt text information that we provide. So an example is, if we see people entering prompts about landscapes, and then we also notice that they have lots of these questions about what's in the background of these landscape images, maybe our alt text, when it comes to landscape related prompts, should emphasize the background of these images. Personally, I would love to have us support user queries against images. And just another detail I wanted to point out is that, like, we're talking about providing all this information around details, and I think this is really helpful because details can help reveal preferences. Users discover their own preferences when they're presented with options. So an example here is, like, the prompt didn't talk about glaze, but all the images turned out to have glaze. And just while trying out some ideas, when I mentioned to Susheta that, hey, this cake has glaze on it, she was actually interested in it. Even though that wasn't something she mentioned in the prompt, she did not have that in mind. She only thought about glaze when I described that all the cakes had this glaze. So the detail of the glaze revealed her preference for it. And this is really helpful because this revealed preferences can be used to refine the prompt. She can select an image with a particular glaze that she really likes and use it for future generated images. Or she can just hear that, oh, there's this glaze on this image, so that's the cake that I want, even though she didn't specify that in the prompt. Like, the extra detail can be the deciding factor. And so I just want to clarify, like, using Firefly, I think that we're talking about all the details that you can provide in alt text, and it might seem overly abundant or generous, but these details are available to sighted users. Sighted users use text to image. They generate 4 images that are very similar, and somehow they land on one particular image eventually. And that's because there's something about this image that makes it different from all the others, and they like that detail about this image. We need to make these details available so that blind and low vision users can make that same informed decision. Okay. Finally, the last challenge that I want to talk about, maybe not the last challenge in alt text, but for our purposes, the next question is, how accurate is the alt text? Let's look at this example. I entered this image in ChatGPT. I asked for a description of the image, and it said stuff like vibrant purple color with white icing dripping down the side. And here, this image, cake number 1, does not have white icing. It's purple icing. I would actually call it maybe purple glaze, but nonetheless, it's purple, not white. And ChatGPT went on to say there are 3 lit candles on top, adding to the celebratory atmosphere. And there are indeed not 3 candles, there are 5 or 6. So generated AI-generated images can have errors or mistakes, and not surprisingly, alt text that's generated by AI can also have mistakes. But maybe there's something we can do around providing a confidence level. if we said that the white icing, vibrant purple color with white icing dripping down the sides had an accuracy level of 6, and 3 lit candles on top adding to the celebratory atmosphere had a level of confidence level of 8 on a scale of 1 to 10, like maybe that could be helpful. But in my conversation with blind and low vision users, adding this confidence level actually raises more questions than they answer, such as what part of that alt text has low confidence? And what should users even do with this information if the alt text isn't accurate? This is not even about the image anymore, it's about the alt text. So it ends up raising a bunch of questions, and where I landed just in talking with blind and low vision people is that confidence in alt text and its accuracy is something that they feel will improve over time in the same way that generative AI has improved over time. Text to image is getting better and better, and people's confidence is increasing in it. And similarly, they expect the same thing around alt text. So just looking forward, we have some next steps. The first next step is that we want to finish annotating the differences data. This is the differences between two images. And we want to use this data to train an image difference captioning model, which will take images, ultimately take 4 images, figure out the differences between the images, and then summarize that difference. After that, we want to create a prototype of text to image with difference alt text and a prompt, and along with our prompt image similarity score that exists today. And we want to see, we want to do user testing to see if that's helpful and also how can it be better. I would love to see that prompt parts and image matching model working as well, but that's further in the future. We've been talking about alt text and what that could look like, what details we need to include. And here's an example, taking image number 1, an example alt text that I wrote, because we're not at that point yet with generative AI. Here we have the alt text, eye level photo of a 1-tier round cake. It has purple frosting and is topped with clear sprinkles, purple glaze and strawberries. It has lit candles that are yellow, green, and pink. The cake is on a white pedestal. The pedestal is in the middle of a grooved wood plank surface. Next to the cake are whole strawberries, including 2 strawberries, on a flat, rectangular, multicolored object. In the background, there are blurred trees and grass, and sunlight comes in from the top. I know there's a lot of information here, way longer than the recommended 250 characters for alt text, but how to present this information is another problem entirely that we will eventually get to. For now, I think just following the considerations that I've covered, this is the kind of details we would want to include in the alt text for this image. And so going back to that question, right, we have Susheta who's trying to create an image of a birthday cake for her nephew's birthday card. We have this question, which image is the best? This is an important problem because text to image opens image editing opportunities for many users, but blind and low vision users are barred from participating. In my view, we'll be successful with alt text when blind and low vision users can select the best image without assistance from a sighted person. So we've talked about the ways that blind and low vision users can get images for their needs, but if they stand, in my mind, they stand to gain a lot from text to image alt text. With text to image and appropriate alt text, blind and low vision users can unleash their creativity and do work quickly and most of all independently. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, MJ. That was wonderful. I loved your content. Attendees loved your content. There's lots of questions. Let's just go ahead and get started with the first one.
Okay.
So the first question, what is your opinion on marking images as decorative? Should it be considered a best practice?
Are we talking about text to image or, so I'm, around that question, I'm wondering, uh, are we talking about text to image or are we just talking about images in general? And if we're talking about text to image, we definitely can't mark it as decorative because they're definitely not decorative. We just gone over this, why we need descriptions for text to image images. But if Sushada's gonna, use this image in her card, and she wants to make sure that card is accessible, maybe provide alt text or not, I would recommend that, I would leave it up to Sushada. I could see her in her card marking that image as decorative if she thinks that, my nephew understands this is a birthday card and it's the message that counts, which is like this text message that she includes in the card. But she also did spend a good amount of time thinking about this image and picking something that would look good. So maybe for her, it's not just decorative, it actually means a lot. And maybe she wants to make sure that, that the meaning of that image is conveyed and like the details of that image are conveyed. So I think regarding the question, should images be marked as decorative or not? I think context matters. I think context matters as to like how that image is used and what the author's intent was for that image.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question. How would you recommend balancing between alt text that's too verbose and alt text that's too short?
Okay. Again, I'm wondering, is this for text to image or is this just for alt text like on a web page? I would say for our purposes here, for text to image, the alt text, I think we saw how there are like virtually infinite differences between images. So I would probably say that I don't know if it's possible to be too verbose. I think that you can come up with a lot of details between around differences between images, and that could be overwhelming. But that's when we need to really think about how do we present this information. Should it alt text? The alt attribute on the image probably isn't going to cut it anymore. We probably want paragraphs. We want headings for different sections. Maybe tables would be helpful, depending on the data that we want, the details that we want to present. But so for text to image, I don't think we have to worry about being too verbose. But we really should think about what's important to the user, what matters to them, what kind of details do they want to know. And that's how I would prioritize the details. Regarding images that are just like used not in text to image, I would leave it up to the author who is putting that image on a web page or in the presentation. I would just try to focus on writing alt text that captures what it is you're trying to convey with that image in your web page or in your presentation. It can be short, but if that's all you need to say about it, then that's fine.
That makes sense. Thank you. The next one, in Firefly, there was a setting referencing visual intensity. Are you familiar with that? And what kind of changes would that implement?
Yeah, I've played around with it a little bit, and from my experience with it, if you increase the intensity, it adds more detail to the image. It's like, I wouldn't say it's like going from a blurry image to a sharper image, but it just provides like more details. Like maybe if you had like a brick building, like that bicycle leaning against a brick wall that I used earlier, you could probably see more. You would see more details in that brick or in the mud between the bricks.
That's really cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next one. How could a blind or low vision individual assess the quality of the images provided by Firefly or any AI, artificial intelligence image generator for that matter?
Yeah, well, I think quality, with that question, I have to respond with like, what do we mean by quality? I think we should I think I think that our team, the Firefly team, should understand should be clear about what they mean by quality, and then convey that to users, like what quality means, how they measure quality. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't work on the Firefly product itself. I just support it when it comes to accessibility. But when we talk about quality, I'm thinking about the AI mistakes, AI errors. And like I said, we don't have this right now, but we are looking into a model that will detect AI errors. And I think that if and when we're able to detect them, we should surface that in the alt text to make sure that blind and low vision people also have access to that information and know that, you know, the bicycle is missing a pedal. But right now we don't have this information available, so a blind person could not assess the quality of images. Right now, unfortunately, they still have to. One way that they could assess the quality is to get a sighted person to help them out.
Excellent. Thank you. I believe we've got time for one more. Are there any cost concerns with generating these alt texts? Is it something that is enabled for everyone or only upon request?
So I want to emphasize that this is still a work in progress and we have not built this out yet. There are cost concerns. Just, you know, me talking with researchers, we have not got this. We haven't. We're trying to build our own model. We're trying to train our own model, and that's what we're doing with next steps, which will be way cheaper than trying to just throw this all to something like GPT Vision, because that's very expensive. So we are trying to keep costs low by building our own model. I see so there are cost concerns. Is it something that's enabled for everyone or only upon request? Again, this doesn't exist yet, but when it is available, I can see some people trying to push for making it available only upon request, but I would argue that we shouldn't do that. And so I think we'll see, but it's not something that I would want to happen.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Well, thank you for a great session, MJ.